Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. It is review time once again, and today's review comes in the shape of the DC comic adaptation of the Green Lantern. Now, before I get into this review, let me go about and say this. When I heard that the Green Lantern film was going to be adapted into live action, I literally thought, hold on, DC don't happen to make any other films outside of Batman and Superman. And while technically speaking they have made a few films outside of that of Batman and Superman, they have not been nearly as good as the Superman and Batman films. But let's be honest, when it comes to making films from DC Comics, Batman seems to be the only thing that they can actually get right, especially with the Christopher Nolan films. So as time went on, the cast and crew were selected, and then the trailer started showing up. And to be honest, from the time I saw the first trailer of the Green Lantern, I had to say I was not overly impressed, nor was I excited. And so, the subsequent trailers of the Green Lantern started to show up, and more my interest in the film started to grow. I actually thought, you know what, this film might not be nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, I watched it on the opening night just to see what the deal was, and to be honest, it wasn't all that good. And while I'm not familiar with the source material of the Green Lantern, I can definitely tell a good superhero movie when I see one, and this is definitely not one of those good superhero movies. It was alright. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but definitely not all that good either. I think the issue with the Green Lantern film is that it suffers from three main problems. The film is anticlimactic, there is also too much information to take in, and it also felt like the film was a wasted opportunity. Now, the plot of the Green Lantern, as far as I understand it, involves an intergalactic police force known as the Green Lanterns, who are these protectors of the universe, who are based in 3,600 sectors of the universe, and each of those sectors has one Green Lantern to go about protect it. The greatest of the warriors was Abin Sur, who happened to defeat this massive enemy called Parallax at one point. However, Parallax gets out, takes out Abin Sur, and then Abin Sur, on the brink of death, runs off to Earth to find a person to replace him. Enter Hal Jordan, a test pilot who happens to have father issues, who happens to be the first chosen human to become a Green Lantern. Hal Jordan takes up this responsibility. He has to learn to use the power of will and overcome fear in order to take out the enemy Parallax, a massive floating cloud with a face that feeds on people's fears. And so that's a very simplistic version of the plot. So while I haven't gone into several other story elements that take place in the film, that is literally the gist of the actual plot. And as different as the Green Lantern is in terms of its source material, the story content feels like stuff that we've seen before. And at several points in the film, the story feels really predictable and is treading old ground. Now let's move on to the characters of the Green Lantern. Now when it comes to Ryan Reynolds playing Hal Jordan in the film, he was alright. He did pretty well doing the humour based areas of the film, and he does the superhero stuff fairly well as well. But to be honest, when I look at him compared to several of the other sort of superhero movies that I've seen, he's just an okay sort of superhero. He's not completely terrible, but at the same time he wasn't all that memorable either in his role. And Blake Lively as Carol Ferris, she looked beautiful, I have to say, and she was totally hot in the film. But other than that, she didn't really do anything else for me in the film. She didn't seem to come across as an independent character. She more or less came across as a supporting cast member for Hal Jordan and nothing more than that. Now let's talk about Peter Sarsgaard, who happens to play Hector Hammond in the film. Straight from the time I saw the trailer, I could not take this guy seriously. Even if he was in the real world standing in front of me right now, I could not take that guy seriously. Not with a fat head like that. And in the film, I was proven right. You cannot take that guy seriously. Sure, he has some interesting powers to go about and read minds, and also has telekinetic abilities as well. The guy comes across as a fairly over-the-top villain. But even then, he doesn't even come across as a villain to me. He just comes across as a sort of smart outsider who happens to be brooding over his past, and happens to come into contact with a power that he's only just getting the hang of, only for him to go about and get killed off. In the end, he's just not a villain I could take seriously. He just has some of the cheesiest dialogue I've ever seen in any film, and he just screams so much in the film. It's so annoying. But I also wanted to go about and talk about the sort of supporting cast. Hal Jordan's sort of best friend with the glasses in the film, I can't remember his name for the life of me. He just seemed to be a fairly wasted character. For a guy who's supposedly meant to be Hal Jordan's best friend, he barely happens to come across as the best friend type. More like a work associate than a best friend, really. Were it not for the fact that he said he was his best friend, I would never have clocked on. Plus, the other Green Lantern characters like Sinestro, Tomare, and Kilowog all seem to be fairly wasted characters for all the screen time that they do get in the film, which is fairly good, and Sinestro happens to have some fairly cool scenes in the film. Overall, they're fairly wasted characters, and to be honest, they weren't fully utilised in the film. Now, one thing I happened to notice about the Green Lantern straight from the first 10 minutes of watching the film is that I kept on asking myself, how feasible is this? But the problem is, it just doesn't feel all that feasible. With all the things that take place in the film and all of the stuff that you as an audience member are meant to take in and believe that it is real, you just don't believe it. But I feel that casual filmgoers will feel a little overwhelmed with all of the stuff that they have to take in, especially straight from the beginning and then everything else that transpires throughout the rest of the film. Now, let's go about and talk about those three main problems that I mentioned about the Green Lantern, starting with the first, the anticlimactic nature of the film. When it comes to the Green Lantern, I just didn't have enough time to go about and process what I saw. And while you do get around to understanding exactly what's going on, I mean, there are so many things that happen in such a short space of time. But rather than finding a way to go about and streamline several years of comic book mythology, the film feels like it's just throwing levels upon levels of information at you that only comic book fans will be able to truly appreciate. Okay, so now we move into the final problem with the Green Lantern film, the missed opportunity. Now for me, from what I learned about the Green Lantern in the Justice League TV series and the few episodes that the Green Lantern was in when he showed up in the Batman TV series, he happens to be a superhero capable of many things, and the fact that his ring has the ability to go about and craft so many different types of objects and is only limited to your imagination. Hal Jordan should have been able to craft many different things of awesomeness. And okay, I can understand that obviously this is the first film in what could be a potential trilogy. You know, he's only just adjusting to his powers and learning about how they work. But for me, the things that Hal crafted with his ring wasn't nearly as cool as they could have been. Some of the things were a bit typical and some of it was okay, but I felt that with his lantern ring he could have crafted a lot more interesting items or weapons to go about and take on his enemies. And so overall, the Green Lantern film is just a missed opportunity. It just felt like the source material just wasn't utilised in the right fashion. It just doesn't seem to have that je ne sais quoi or certain flavour that you expect from first entries and certain trilogies that you got with Batman, Spider-Man or Iron Man. So overall, I give the Green Lantern film a 6 out of 10. And while it isn't the worst film I've seen this year and definitely isn't the worst superhero film that I've seen in existence, it still wasn't that good either. So this has been my review. Hopefully you found it informative and, you know, look out for my next review when it comes. So until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, the Hypersonic 55, signing out.